Good morning. Here we are again. I think we're up to like something 20 something videos now. So this is a long series of posts I'm doing defending Christianity so that I can work on my ability to speak without having a lot of like bad speech patterns. Like I've picked up on a lot of bad speech patterns since I've been listening to these that I didn't even realize I had. So I'm trying to correct those, and also just to be able to speak a fluid sentence without like pausing to think of a word or stuttering over my words or losing my train of thought or something like that. Just be able to fluidly speak the way I see most people speaking. You know, some people just seem to take it for granted, the ability to just speak. And it's maddening to me that what for some people is just totally natural and easy, for me is just this monumental thing that's hard to do. And if you can't speak, I mean, that's the way we humans interact with each other most of the time, by speaking. Maybe I need to learn sign language. Maybe if I learned sign language, I wouldn't need to be able to speak. But anywho, let's get to our topic today. So I'm doing a little short series right now on whether or not the universe had a beginning, a finite time ago. And so I've already mentioned the past three videos were on scientific reasons. Now I'm going to get into the philosophical reasons. And the first one I'm going to talk about is actual infinities, or the argument against. Let me just put it this way. Okay, so like there are different kinds of infinities, and some infinities are bigger than other infinities, if that makes any sense, which I don't know. I'm not gonna go into all those different kinds of infinities. I'm gonna leave links to two different videos on infinities in the description. One of them is going to be something like how to define infinity, and another one is how to count past infinity, things like that. Infinity is just a really interesting concept. There was a whole YouTube channel called PBS Infinite Series that just did nothing but talk about infinities and stuff like that. So, but what we're talking about today is a particular kind of infinity. It's just, I guess you could call it a numerical infinity, where it's just like if you say, take the natural numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 out to infinity. That's the kind of infinity I'm talking about. There are other infinities involving irrational numbers and stuff like that. I'm not talking about those. So, so in math, infinities make a lot of sense. And I remember when I was in calculus, we used to do limits that involved infinities, and we did infinite series, where you had to add like an infinite series, or there were like or infinite sums or something like that. We used infinities all the time in calculus, and it all made sense. But what we're going to talk about today is whether or not an actual infinity can be instantiated in reality, whether there can actually be an infinite number of things, like an infinite number of basketballs or something like that, where you could just label them 1, 2, 3 out to infinity. So there are a lot of paradoxes that are created by trying to map infinity onto reality. In math, when you're doing it in math, there are certain rules that you have to follow that help you avoid those paradoxes. But if you actually mapped it onto reality, those rules wouldn't necessarily apply. And so that's what generates these paradoxes. And so you may have heard about Hilbert's Hotel. That's usually the go-to paradox that people bring up. But since there's so much stuff on Hilbert's Hotel on the internet, I'm not going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about one that I came up with. And I came up with this when I was having a debate with somebody one time. Okay, so let's say that there's an infinite number of straight men and an infinite number of straight women, and that you pair them up. Now they're like couples. So now you have an infinite number of couples and stuff. Jim and Tammy, Jill and Mark. Basically, so each woman has a man and each man has a woman. So they're girlfriend and boyfriend. Okay, so if this kind of thing can be instantiated in reality, then you get kind of a weird thing. Like, let's say that every other woman ceases to exist, or breaks up with her boyfriend or whatever. They're gone. So now you would think that you've got, half every other man has a girlfriend and every other man is single. So like half of them are single and half of them have a girlfriend. But it's actually possible to rearrange these couples in such a way that everybody now has a partner. And the reason is because of a weird property that infinite sets have, which is that if you have two sets and each of them are infinite, then you can put them in one-to-one correspondence. So, like take the number system, 1 through infinity. You can put that into correspondence, a one-to-one correspondence, with all of the even numbers, without the odd numbers. So you just pair like 1 with 2, 2 with 4, 3 with 6, 4 with 8, etc., out to infinity, and there'd be nothing left over. So there are just as many even numbers as there are even and odd numbers together. And so with that being the case, if you had this situation where every other man was single, you could have all the women break up with all the men, rearrange them, and now have everybody be coupled up again with nobody left over. Nobody has to be single. And that's strange if you think about it, because think about it on a one-to-one level. How is it possible that by Jill breaking up with Bob and going out with Mark instead, just by changing partners, you can fix this situation and make it to where everybody's, you got this couple and stuff. That's really weird. And so it doesn't seem possible. That's one reason to suspect that infinities are not impossible. And there's other paradoxes that come up. Like, let's imagine it's a situation where you got two planets orbiting a star. One planet's closer in and one's farther out. So the one that's closer in, let's say it takes it a year to get around. And let's say the one that's farther out, it takes it 2 years to go all the way around. So as time goes on, you can see that for every one revolution of the inner planet, or every 2 revolutions of the inner planet, the outer planet just makes 1. And so as time goes on, the number of revolutions of the inner planet keeps getting higher and higher relative to the outer planet. So if you were like tallying up how many revolutions each had made, the outer planet would get just farther and farther behind. But if they've been going around that star for an infinite amount of time, then the number of revolutions, you can put the number of revolutions of one into one-to-one correspondence with the number of revolutions of the other, which means that they've really been going around the same amount of time. And that's also paradoxical. There's another one. There's this Tristram Shandy paradox. Tristram Shandy's he's this guy who is writing his autobiography. But the problem is that it takes him a whole year just to write about one day of his life. And so as time goes on, he gets farther and farther behind. But if he had an infinite amount of time, then he should be able to finish his autobiography, because the number of days will equal the number of years. You can put them in one-to-one correspondence. So you get all these crazy paradoxes. Now, if the past is infinite, or if the past, has no beginning, then it's infinite. And so you can just divide it up. There's an infinite number of hours, there's an infinite number of days, or however you want to divide it up. You can divide it up into equal intervals of time and still have an infinite number. Now you might say, okay, let me put it this way. So let's say that during each hour in the past, a wizard created a sphere, and it's a sphere that once it comes into existence, it never ceases to exist. So with that scenario, if the past is infinite, there should be an infinite number of spheres in the present. But since it's impossible for there to be an infinite number of spheres in the present, it follows that the past cannot be infinite. So this is one argument showing that the past cannot be infinite. And there you have it. Again, this is one of those situations where not everybody agrees, but I don't know. I've read a lot of stuff about the Hilbert's Hotel paradox, and attempts to resolve it, to try to make the paradox go away. And none of the stuff I've read really persuades me that infinities or actual infinities are possible. And so this applies not only to the past, but it also applies to the size of the universe. The universe can't be infinite in size, because if it were, then you could theoretically divide it up into equally sized cubes, put a BB inside of each cube, and you'd have an infinite number of BBs. But since there can't be an infinite number of BBs, there can't be an infinite number of equally sized cubes, and so there can't be an infinitely sized universe. So there you have it. So the universe is both finite in the past and it's finite in size. There you have it. As has become usual lately, I thought of something else I wanted to add to this video. This is my cat, Aristotle, but that's not what I wanted to add to the video. I wanted to respond to an objection that frequently comes up whenever this whole issue of actual infinities comes up. So what I'm arguing here is that actual infinities are impossible. It's impossible for there to be an actually infinite number of things in the universe. So the objection that often comes up is, well, God is infinite, and so if there can't be an actual infinite, then there can't be a God. I can understand that objection coming up if you don't really understand what is being meant by infinity in these two cases. This argument against God from actual infinities commits the fallacy of equivocation, because an infinite is not being used in the same sense in both cases. Nobody who says God is infinite thinks that God is an infinite collection of discrete things. That's not what people mean. What they mean rather is either that they just mean that God has all, his omni attributes to an exhaustive power. It's not really even a precise way of using infinite. It means that he's all powerful or all knowing or whatever. So yeah, the argument against actual infinities does not apply to God, because God is not actually infinite in the sense of being a collection of discrete things that are numerically infinite. So anyway, there you go.